Steph Tsitsipas in Monte Carlo getting the win has had a very rough, by his standards. Listen, when I criticize Alcaraz, it's against his own shadow. When I criticize Novak, it's against his own shadow. Someone who's 80 in the world making a fourth round is great and has a little bit of levity to the description. You're based against your own shadow. And so the last 16 months, Tsitsipas has been less than he was, to his credit, for the 5 or 6 years before that, where he was routinely a top 5 guy and a contender at majors and one who almost won one at the French Open. He needed this switch of service, and I think I said it after Miami. He desperately needed to switch over to the clay. He needed some home cooking. He has won twice in Monte Carlo, and Steph Tsitsipas played great. He played great tennis. You could kind of actively see him fighting through some scar tissue. Zverev, as the example, up a set, up 5-0, and then Zverev gets back into it. You can kind of see the doubt creep in a little bit, but then to recover, to kind of choke the set away and then recover and close him out in a breaker, huge win. Kept fighting against Sinner in the semifinals. I think Sinner was generally maybe the better player on the day, up 4-2. It looked like he had a leg injury. Now they're trying to sell it as a cramp, which, if you're a Sinner fan, you hope it's a cramp. That goes away with a couple bottles of water. If it's an injury, that's more concerning. But he says, I'm going to play in Madrid, so plenty of time there. But Tsitsipas getting that win and then closing out the tournament in a match against Casper Ruud, who, by the way, has made 2 French Open finals of his own, convincingly, 1-4. Strategically in that match against Casper Ruud. I was on TC Live all week, and it was a clinic in hitting to his strength to open up the weakness, right? I don't know how many times during my career some dummy who is an accountant just hit it to his backhand. I promise you we've thought of that. I swear we've thought of that. We've been doing this since we were like 6. But pressuring the Casper Ruud forehand, not letting him kind of settle in and getting those inside outs from the backhand corner, backhand up the line, everything that Steph Tsitsipas does well naturally translates to clay without adjustment needed, right? So when he returns, he can kind of lay back and get the hide on his backhand return. It's tougher for someone to take that on the rise or early, however you want to call it. On the rise is such an antiquated term. I hate that I just used it. But take it earlier, rush the opponent. Steph can get some height on that backhand, can switch directions a little bit easier. He's fluent in movement, so his transition game doesn't suffer like most of us hackers on clay. He's able to get through the court. He served a little bit better. The clay actually doesn't hurt his serve at all. He has that little bunny kick out wide that he doesn't hit big, probably, I don't know, 84 to 87 range, but it kicks sideways and you have so much court to cover, and he actually has time for that first shot. So you can't just like drill that middle and hope that he's rushed. His swings are pretty big. They're big and fluid. The faster the court gets, the tougher those are to time. He's capable of doing it. We've seen him do it. So put away your Twitter fingers and say, well, he made the finals of the Aussie Open and won World Tour. I understand that. He prefers more time. He prefers more time. And when he has more time, he can bully you around the court and get the ball up. His superpower, leaning back on the backhand. His backhand goes from maybe below average on fast courts to above average on a clay court. Gets it up out of the zone. And you have to kind of protect that one on the backhand side, him going flipper Magoo up to where you're above your shoulders, and then he burns you line. I thought he had a great grasp of shot selection, when to go for it, when not to. Happy for him. He needed this maybe more than anyone in the top 15 in the world, just based on the precedent of his career. And this isn't me, going after Steph. It's based against his own shadow. Again, I criticize Alcaraz. It's against what we saw last year at Wimbledon when he shocked the world and beat Novak Djokovic there. It's, when I'm saying an observation about Novak, all of you that go, yeah, you only won once. Yeah, no, I understand. I'm fully, eyes wide open. I fully understand all of it. You base your analysis of someone against their own shadow, against their own precedent that they've set. Steph Tsitsipas at 12 in the world. It's the lowest he's been, and one of you nerds is going to correct me, but it's something 5, 6, 7 years since he's been that low, trending the wrong direction. He needed this result to reestablish himself. Did an unbelievable job. Very happy for him. You could see how much it meant to him. Going through some big names in Monte Carlo. This wasn't an accidental win where everyone kind of got beat out of the draw. He beat some serious clay court players, beat the hottest player on tour, Sinner. There was an umpire situation, which is a whole nother can of worms, which is just like the inconsistencies in umpiring is just so dumb. And I'll actually talk about that in the close today because that's been like a thing. How we don't have replay. It's like, well, it'll be there next year. I'm like, well, I wasn't there this year. Like, that's like rewinding a cassette by hand.
So you're just going to talk about it now?
No, I'm going to get in. It's fair feedback. Anyways, Steph Tsitsipas, props, way to go. Casper Ruud reestablished himself, making a final there. Still has not won an ATP tournament. I said that like James Blake, like I was from Connecticut, a tournament. Above a 250 level, he will. He's a great player. You can't say he hasn't won. He doesn't play well in the big tournaments. He's made 3 slam finals, which he's almost more consistent in the bigger events than he is in the smaller ones, not counting 250s where the draws are a little bit limited. But I thought he played great. I think it was a good week for Novak. Got his paces in. You know, you have to be a certain kind of player for people to criticize a semifinal showing in the first clay court tournament of the year when you've only played 2 other events and you beat a top 10 player along the way. No other player on earth would get criticism for that. So we're going to leave that there. It was a little strange. His he was like laboring. His breath looked like it was short early, especially against Demon Hour. It was interesting. You feel like he's still trying to find his match fitness, which is normal. It's normal. It's not a criticism. I'm so like scared of Nole's Twitter people. I say something like he was breathing heavily, and even though he was breathing heavily, they'll be like, "Oh no, you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." No worries. You breathe heavily too. I'm like, yeah. But,
do you think they'll still be like that when they get charged to reply?
I don't know. I just eat from them all the time. I'm like effusive going through how brilliant he is. I think I was the first to say that he was the greatest before it was generally accepted. But you can't win them all, Mike. It's not what we're trying to do here. I thought it was a good week for him. Uncharacteristic at the end, but if you haven't played a lot of matches, it's ridiculous to think that you're going to play matches at the peak of your abilities. He needs to play more tennis going to Roland Garros. He knows that. He knows better than anyone how to manage this part of the year. He's kind of slowly ramped up the clay court season to get to a Roland Garros title a couple of times, including last year. So not worried about him. Holger Rune played pretty well this week. I love the drama. Medvedev yelled at people, which is always welcome, especially in... Save it for the end. Save the line calling for the end, Mike.
Save it for the end.